behalf of VMUG, I'd like to welcome you to today's webcast, Protecting User Data in a Work-from-Home World with OffsiteDataSync, presented by Brad Jervis, Senior Cloud Architect. Thank you for participating in today's webcast and for your continued support in the Global VMUG program. Before we begin, I have 3 quick housekeeping items to go over. First, today's webcast will be recorded and available for you on demand. You will receive a follow-up email with the on-demand link, so keep an eye out for that. Second, a Q&A session will follow today's presentation. All questions will need to be entered in the questions window near the bottom of your GoToWebinar screen. Third, there will be a short online evaluation that pops up as you exit the webcast. Please make sure to take a minute and let us know of what you thought of today's session and what you might like to see going forward. Attendees from today's webcast who opted in at registration will be entered into a drawing to win a $250 Amazon gift card. A representative from OffsiteDataSync will email the winner following webcast today, so good luck. All right, let's get started. Brad, I'll turn it over to you.
Awesome, thanks, Nick. Hello, everyone. Again, my name is Brad Jervis, Senior Cloud Architect with OffsiteDataSync. What we're going to be talking about today is something that should probably be on the top of most people's minds due to recent events, and that's how do we protect user data in a work-from-home world? Over the past few months, a lot of us, I'd say most of us probably on this webcast, have shifted our views from our users being local to where we can access their machines individually, we can control their backups, we can enforce certain policies, to now everyone kind of works from home, and a lot of folks are starting to just figure out exactly what that means and develop strategies to be able to protect our users. So what we're going to do today is just go over some of the challenges of what working from home means. What does that mean to change the ecosystem from an office to just everyone spread all over the place? We're going to talk about what we think is the solution to protecting that user data. We're going to talk about some of the management aspects that we get from that, because obviously anything where we have users spread across everywhere, management is going to be key. So we're going to kind of loop in a little bit of that. And then we're going to go through some scenarios about individual things that have happened where users may have lost data and how we can actually protect them and get them back and working as soon as possible. So let's dive right in. So challenges of a work from home office. So a lot of these are going to be, kind of, okay, obviously we need to recover quickly. But when we have an office, maybe we have extra machines on hand, things like that. It's quite easy to go in and just recover someone, their machine blows up, their hard drive fails or something. You replace that and you go in and you replace it very quickly. Life is good, no problem. But when everyone works from home, very distant away from each other, enforcing social distancing, that's not always easy. So we're going to really rely on, recovering quickly with some of our software capabilities that we'll be talking about. We also need flexible environments. So since user equipment is no longer in the office, there's a higher chance of damage, as you can see from the screen back here. I mean, it's not like everyone doesn't drink coffee in the work environment on their desk as well, but it's very easy to see how it can be a little bit more risky to our equipment to actually work from home, especially when you have pets or kids. Maybe you have, some headphones that you leave plugged in, an animal runs by, knocks your laptop over, and suddenly it's not working anymore. And it's up to us as IT administrators to be able to say, okay, well, here's the plan to get you back and working, because buying a new computer, shipping it to them, all of the configuration and everything becomes much, much more difficult when you have no physical proximity to your user. And also it's going to be about administration. So it's up to us to be able to have some visibility into what our users are doing, ensuring that their data is protected and easily recoverable. So the solution for these problems, or at least one of them, and I think probably one of the best, is the Veeam Agent for Windows and Linux. So we're going to mostly be talking about Windows today, just because I'd say that that's a vast majority of what our users are going to be working on. But much, if not all, of the features we're going to be talking about is also available in the Linux agent as well. So if you have some developers who have those Linux boxes that you want to start protecting as well, much of what we're going to be talking about is going to apply to them. So what is Veeam Agent, and specifically Veeam Agent for Windows? Well, a lot of you might be thinking, well, Veeam, wait, hold on. I've heard that name before. I've maybe seen demos of the product. I've used it, but isn't that for virtual machines? And the answer is yes. Certainly, Veeam started out as just backing up virtual machines. That was what they did as of a few years ago. That's how they kind of developed prominence. But as they've grown and grown, they saw a need to back up non-virtualized workloads. So these are things like cloud servers, physical servers, workstations, anything that we can't interact with the hypervisor underneath to actually get that backup of that machine. Veeam says, you know what, let's not limit ourselves to just these VMs. Let's make this a broader platform so that we can actually maintain and back up all data in the corporation and have it be a single platform. Now, I put some stars next to that cloud servers there because Veeam actually has some new things coming out with regards to cloud platforms. If you use anything like AWS, Azure, Veeam is actually coming out with some really cool products that can do this directly. However, previously, before these were released, Veeam relied on the Veeam Agent that we'll be talking about now. So a lot of customers would actually use this Veeam Agent to back up their cloud systems because the agent sits directly on the operating system and doesn't need to interact with the hypervisor at all. So that's why I just wanted to put those stars there. So this used to apply mostly to AWS and Azure, but things like Google Cloud, IBM Cloud that don't yet have support with Veeam, this is still 100% applicable. So as I mentioned, the goal is to bring that solution on the entire Veeam Availability Suite umbrella for backing up data workloads. So what does that mean? What is this Veeam umbrella that we're going to be talking about? So this is a slide that I actually pulled and stole directly from Veeam itself, but I think it kind of gives a good overview of what we're talking about. So Veeam has this thing called the Veeam Availability Suite. And this basically is sitting there and is going to actually back up all of our virtualized workloads, everything like that, private and regular virtual workloads. And then we have the public cloud and physical workloads that we're going to be talking about today, which is going to be the Veeam Agent. Now, all of these are able to be managed by the Veeam Availability Console. This Availability Console has actually been renamed to the Veeam Service Provider Console. This slide is a few months old. That's just happened a few weeks ago. But we're going to be talking about that in a little bit. And that provides management for our entire environment. And then we have the ability to orchestrate the failover or recovery of all of this data. And all of that sits under this umbrella of what we call Veeam Cloud Connect. So Veeam Cloud Connect can be connected directly to some of the public hyperscalers like Azure, AWS. We can go direct to either an on-premise or a private cloud solution, or we can go to a Veeam Cloud Connect service provider, similar to what's exactly what OffsiteDataSync does. And there's a lot of benefits to the actual service provider, and we're going to get into those in a little bit of time here. So how does Veeam Agent for Windows work if it doesn't use snapshots on the hypervisor level? It's very simple, and it uses a technology that is used in a lot of these backup products, but there's a lot of tweaks and everything. I'm not going to get into the nitty-gritty details of this because I could fill up easily an hour of time just kind of going into the nuances of how it works and all the different features and everything. The point of this presentation is more about how this product helps us solve the problem of users working from home. If you're interested in some of the more technical details, definitely reach out to us, as this is an area of expertise on us. If you want to say, well, I don't know if this is going to work because of this technical mishap I might have with some technology I use, definitely reach out to us or go ahead and feel free to ask questions, and we'll be able to try to answer as many things as we can in the Q&A. But as you can see, basically what happens is we take a VSS snapshot of the individual volumes, and then we actually back up from that snapshot itself. And that allows us to, have that point in time consistency across all of the data on there. As you can see here, we have a nice little, backup screen, and we can see that we're backing up our C drive. It's going about 5 megabytes a second, not as quick as we'd like to see in some cases, but sometimes when you work from home, you don't always have the best internet. And that's another challenge that we'll be talking about in just a moment. So, okay, great. You can back up your data from your machine. You have this Veeam Agent deployed on your users' computers. It backs up into either a USB drive or a cloud provider or any of the other options that Veeam offers. But how do we restore it? What are the restore options? So you can always do basic file folder level recovery. This is, let's say, if your user accidentally deleted some local file, maybe they don't have shadow copies enabled for it, they can go in and recover that file directly from their backups themselves, or we as administrators can actually control that restoration directly to their machine as well, depending on the management solution that we have. You can do entire volume restores, and I know what you're thinking. Okay, well, if I need to do an entire volume restore, I obviously, especially if it's my C drive, I can't be in my operating system. So how does this work? We're going to be talking about this in just a second, but Veeam has this wonderful thing called the recovery boot media, We'll go over that in just a moment. It's very, very cool. It's actually replaced a few tools that I used to carry around with me all the time just because of how featureful it is, but very, very cool and huge piece of the product. And the last we can do is an instant recovery to VMware or Hyper-V. In our case today, we'll mostly be talking about VMware. But what this allows us to do is take these backups of physical machines, and in the same way that Veeam works, it will basically mount the in the VM or the VMware context, it'll basically mount the backup location as a data store, and it'll actually spin up that backup data as a virtual machine. And then you can do things such as vMotion it to production storage and everything, but this allows us to instantly spin up those VMs inside of that environment. We can also do regular recovery to VMware as well. Let's say our backup storage is just really crunched for IO and it's going to make more sense for us just to do a restore to a regular VMware environment. We can do that as well. But the point is that any of these machines that our users might be using across the globe or what have you that are being backed up by Veeam Agent for Windows, as long as they're stored in a centralized location, like a cloud provider, like OffsiteDataSync, we can actually recover these to VMware and not have to worry about hardware for them. So we're going to talk about that a little bit later, and that's going to be some of the scenarios, but just to kind of give you a little preview here. So let's talk about that Veeam recovery media, because I think this is pretty critical to understanding how the Veeam agent for Windows and Linux can help us and help our users. So the recovery media is nothing more than a modified Windows boot image. So when you have an issue, let's say with a hard drive of one of your users' machines, you might want to distribute this Veeam recovery media via a USB key to all of your users. So that way that they can have this in their bag, and let's say they lose a hard drive or something, you can call a technician or whomever to replace that hard drive, and then work with the user to actually boot up into that recovery media and very simply restore the entirety of their last backup back down to that directly from the cloud. So in this case, where normally you would have to go to the user, actually get the disk replaced, maybe reinstall the operating system with a bunch of bloatware, and then reinstall the utilities, and then the user has to go back and change their profile and all their desktop icons and all of that other fun stuff. We don't have to worry about that anymore because everything is automatically stored in this. And this can be created for every single agent that's deployed. And what I mean by that is that you can make images that actually contains all the drivers that you might need for that machine. So even if you do need to do anything else or, push to different hardware, let's say you're phasing out this old model of laptop and working in a new one, you can actually preload the drivers for the new one. So that way when you restore, it's actually going to load up those new drivers and you don't have to work through any potential issues with network or display or anything like that from Windows trying to use an incorrect driver. So it's very much, especially if you do some planning, a feature-full ability to take your users and remove any of the unnecessary work that they would normally need to do to be able to get you access to that system and just basically say, okay, here you go, press this, enter your credentials, boom, you'll be recovered. So here we have how this is created, just to give you a little bit of an idea when you actually spin this up. Basically, you say you can include the decryption key if the data is encrypted. This might be good to, there's some security concerns with this, but it might be good for users to have this where they don't actually know the encryption key of their backup data. So this is very useful for an administrator where they don't actually have to give that to the user. You can include all the network connection settings. This is something that we obviously want to recommend, all the hardware drivers. And then if you look at the bottom there, we can actually include additional drivers, whether it's for network or storage or whatever else that we might need to restore to different hardware. And after that, you simply point it to a location on your whatever you're doing to create this, whether it's your local machine or a server, and it will create the ISO for you. And it automatically goes through, loads in that bootable copy of Windows, and life is good. So a few more things I wanted to just get on this is it actually also includes a lot of wonderful utilities that's included in regular Windows recovery media. So I can actually go in and I can, reset, the local administrator password of a computer. I can get a command prompt access in that bootable copy and do whatever else I need to. So when I said that this replaced a few tools in my tool bag, I usually used to have an ultimate boot CD that I would walk around just in case something happens. And I found that the Veeam recovery media, while also acting as the ability to recover my personal laptop, which I use Veeam Agent for Windows on, I can also do some things like, actually recover passwords of, administrator accounts, get in and do some initial troubleshooting with Veeam bootable media, all that other fun stuff. So that's actually replaced some of the tools in my library. So honestly, the platform is pretty diverse as far as some of the stuff that you can do with it outside of just backup and recovery. So let's just talk about some other features that the platform has, because especially when you work from home, there's a lot of nuances depending on what kind of environment the user's working in. So we have something called a local backup cache. What does that mean? Well, a local backup cache is the ability to designate portions of your hard drive to handle backup data if you might not be in an environment where you're connected. So the typical item I'll say for this is, let's say you're working on a long flight. Maybe it's a 12-hour flight across the globe or something. Not really too many of those going on right now, but when things start to open up, you're working on the entire flight and your backup window kicks off and it says, okay, it's midnight or whatever in the Eastern time and I'm going to do a backup. Obviously, you're not connected to the internet, and if you are, you might be on a metered connection or something. So what Veeam will do is actually utilize that local backup cache to create the incremental backup, store it on your local hard drive, and then as soon as you plug that computer into a non-metered connection or a fast connection, it'll then point that up and shoot it up directly to the cloud. So this allows you to take that backup of that data and then automatically just send it up, rather than missing your backup windows or anything like that. So it provides a little bit of a cache in the event that you're in between internet connections. We also have throttling for metered connections. This allows us to, not overuse our bandwidth in connections that might either be throttled or maybe, you pay for how much data you use, things of that nature. A lot of folks in really rural areas, maybe you're using LTE, things like that, where you're restricted on data. You can configure Veeam Agent for Windows to basically, if you're on one of those connections, just not even bother backing up or potentially use that local backup cache. So this prevents us from accidentally leaving a backup going on a metered connection and running up a huge bill or running out of all of our bandwidth or whatever else might happen on some of these connections. We also have wake from sleep backup scheduling. So you can configure it to wake the laptop or desktop up from its sleep environment so it can actually perform that backup. We all know that our users, if we tell them, hey, make sure you leave the computer on so it backs up, or, don't put your computer to sleep or something, we all know that, our users may or may not abide by that. So this is just kind of a good stopgap to make sure that no matter what happens, as long as the machine is able to be powered on from that sleep, that we're going to meet that backup schedule. And the other item here is going to be, we can actually back up directly to OneDrive. So this says backup for OneDrive, apologies. This is actually backing up to OneDrive. So we can take these Veeam Agent for Windows backups and send them directly up to Microsoft OneDrive if we like. Now, this certainly does work. However, you're going to be missing a number of good features. So this is something that's probably best for individual users or maybe environments where, OneDrive is a big part of your business. But you're going to miss out on a few features by going with a backup to OneDrive versus going to a Veeam Cloud Connect service provider that, you get with this. And we'll kind of talk about that in a little bit. But one of the biggest factors is going to be the management aspect. So as I mentioned before, it's very important for us, especially when all of our users are spread around in different physical locations, to be able to manage our agent backups or all of our user backups, and not only manage it, but report on it. Be able to look and see, has everything completed? If backups haven't completed, we need to know so we can address the problem and ensure that these backups are happening again. Because if backups aren't running, then frankly, they're not really any use to us, even if they are configured. So this is something that's, very, very critical. And it's something that Veeam has made kind of the focal point of the agent development. And I mentioned it before, but we have this wonderful thing called the Veeam Service Provider Console. So what this does is it's actually a console that Veeam Cloud Connect service providers will deploy in their environment. So let's say you're a customer and you want to have 10 of your remote workers back up their machines directly to a cloud service provider like OffsiteDataSync. You can actually work with OffsiteDataSync and develop the agent deployment script or there's ways that you can do it internally as well, but we're talking about work from home. So typically what you would do is you would create the agent deployment, distribute it to your users. But if we have everything connected, we can use a lot of e-discovery, things like that as well. But unfortunately, a lot from work from home, that's not really something that we can actually do. But you can actually work with this, deploy it, send out the installation to your users or pre-installed on their laptops or desktops that you send to them. And this will actually report back to the service provider console and provide constant updates about the status of those backups, and also allow an administrator to manage those backups, whether that be changing the schedule. Maybe you want to omit some directory where the user has downloaded a bunch of movies or videos or some cache directory or something that we don't want to bother backing up. You have full control over all of that with the Veeam Service Provider console. So this basically allows you to take all of your individual Veeam Agent endpoints and be able to manage them and control them so that your users don't have to do any kind of manual work or anything. As long as it's connected onto the internet and it can get out to this Veeam Service Provider console, you can go back and manage the entire agent deployment across wherever the users might physically be located. And this is huge for administrators, because without this, we need to start calling users. You need to get the remote session with them. It's very difficult to do that in a lot of cases. People have meetings, people are busy, and frankly, a lot of times if things aren't broken, users don't really want to talk to IT. Users just want to be able to get their job done. This removes all of that headache for us. So just to give you a little glimpse, right here we have what that console looks like. And here we can see we have the backup agents. Now, you might be saying, Brad, what do you mean, cloud? Why is this cloud platform? Well, this is just a screenshot of this, and it doesn't matter what platform you're on, because again, Veeam Agent for Windows can be installed on a cloud server. It can be installed on a physical server. It can be installed on a workstation. It doesn't matter. So when we actually go and we have that Veeam Agent for Windows configured and discovered in our console, this is what it looks like. And here we can go and we can assign new backup policies to it. We can actually manage each individual agent. We can activate it, install new licenses. All of that fun stuff that we would expect from a management platform, we can do across the entirety of our environment, across all of our users, no matter where they are, as long as they have an internet connection. It goes all directly out through SSL up to the cloud provider console, just like the user data that gets backed up. So we don't need to worry if they have their VPN connected. We don't need to worry about if they're on the domain. We don't need to worry about all of these things that we would normally have to worry about. It's simply just an agent on there that talks up the phone's home directly to this console, and we can manage all of that from there. So basically, as I mentioned, it allows that automated deployment of agents, especially if you're local. You can have the e-discovery, everything like that. We can configure, monitor all the agents' backups, all the stuff I've been talking about. And also the VSCP is typically offered by a cloud provider. That's why it's the Veeam Service Provider console. So typically, if you back up to things like OneDrive or anything like that, it's very hard to get that integration to work. And even if you do get it to work, you don't get a lot of the features that you get from using a Veeam service provider. So what I wanted to do now is just kind of take a break from the slides and walk you through some of the scenarios that we might have that we might want to benefit from Veeam Service Provider. I'm sorry, the Veeam Agent for Windows. So these are actually real world scenarios that we've pulled. We've obviously changed names, removed company names, and actually changed a number of other things, such as types of applications and everything else. But these are basically things that we've seen in the market that have worked out great for folks. So first, we're going to talk about Kelly. Kelly is a payroll admin, and she works from home. Because of whatever reason it might be. Maybe the current situation might extend. Maybe companies might realize that work from home isn't really a bad thing, and workers might be even more productive working from home. And this is something that we want them to be able to do. That might be it. Anyway, Kelly works from home. She's a payroll admin, and she has a payroll application on her machine with a local database. Now, I know what some of you might be thinking. Brad, come on, what application has a local database that someone needs to run from their computer in 2020? And as much as it pains me to say it, unfortunately, this is, still something that is very abundant, especially in smaller shops or industries that are very specific, where certain application providers haven't quite changed the paradigm to being a client server model or even a client cloud-based model. These things still do exist. So it's just something that we have to protect against and have some solutions for. But during Kelly's workday, her laptop computer was damaged due to a household accident. Maybe her cat jumped on it, knocked the laptop off the desk, hard drive was destroyed, maybe the laptop blue screened, had some hardware issues due to, a spilled coffee incident, whatever it might be. The laptop is damaged and unusable. Now, Kelly needs to complete her work in that payroll application in order to get payroll out in time. Good news is that she has daily backups to a cloud provider that happen every night at midnight or what have you. But Kelly can't wait for corporate to ship her a new laptop, or even worse, if corporate doesn't have any laptops on hand and they have to buy it and then ship it. And as we mentioned before, you have to, reinstall Windows maybe, or uninstall the bloatware, install the new applications. This is just something that Kelly doesn't have the bandwidth to work for. Otherwise, people aren't going to get paid. She's going to miss her deadlines. There's going to be a lot of things that, are going to be very bad for this. Luckily, Kelly's using a cloud provider that also has an infrastructure as a service environment based on VMware vCloud Director. And this particular cloud provider offers the ability to use that instant recovery to VMware functionality in order to restore her data. Okay, well, that sounds good, but what does that mean? What does that mean? So basically, all that needs to happen is Kelly's IT team contacts the provider, and they ask them to locate her most recent backup inside their environment. Most likely, and something that as a provider we always recommend, is that's encrypted. So the cloud provider will work with the customer so that they can enter in that key in a secure method. Once that data is decrypted, they're actually going to spin that VM up in a dedicated resource pool just for Kelly. And Kelly is provided access to a VMware-based SSL VPN Plus client that she can install on Mac, Windows, or Linux, any other computer that she might have. And then from there, she can actually remotely log in to her laptop using that VPN client. Let's say that Kelly doesn't, have the ability to install a VPN client on something. We can actually provide her remote console access to that VM as well, directly through a vCloud Director portal. So Kelly has access to that VM, whether it's because of a remote desktop or via the portal or anything like that. And she's able to log in, complete her work, and work on that as normal. It's great. The question then becomes, well, okay, Kelly's working on a VM now, and that's not ideal. I mean, it's good to get the job done. It's good to, make sure that everything is able to get done and meet her deadlines, but this isn't the ideal way to work. So what do we do as far as getting her data back? Well, typically, it's going to come down to, as soon as we're able to get Kelly new hardware or replace whatever damaged component she had, anything that it comes down to as far as being able to give her access to a machine. Maybe we just say, okay, go out to Best Buy, buy a new laptop, whatever is going to make it work easier for her. Once she has that new laptop, Kelly simply needs to take that Veeam recovery media, plug it into her computer. We'll boot off of that. And we'll actually take one final backup of her machine inside the cloud, because remember, Veeam Agent for Windows is still installed on that machine. It's still there, it's ready to rock and roll, it's still backing up to the cloud, even though it's in the cloud itself. And with that, we're basically able to say, okay, take one last backup, we power down that VM, and then Kelly connects up to that cloud provider. Again, it's nothing more than booting into that media, entering her credentials to connect to that cloud provider, and she's able to download that version of that, the last backup of that virtual machine down into her laptop. And because we have all those drivers and everything for her laptop or any kind of new laptop in there, ideally we'll be able to, image the machine, and all of the drivers will be automatically installed. Kelly boots up her laptop, and it's just like she had never left it. It's same thing as it's always been. Everything is good. Kelly can get back to work, and she can go on uninhibited. So that's scenario one. And this is great for someone who has, local things that need to get done, everything else. But let's talk about scenario number two. And this is something that is near and dear to my heart, because honestly, I'm what you call a road warrior. I work mostly from home. A lot of my time is spent traveling. Well, not so much in the past 3 months, but a large portion of my time is spent traveling. Not so much as Mark, though. So Mark is another road warrior. He travels for 75% of the time. He's in sales, and he travels all over the world or all over the country, all over his region, wherever it might be. And with traveling so much, just like working from home, but probably even worse, our machines are at risk. We're constantly moving our laptops around. We're constantly, plugging them into different outlets. There's just so much potentiality for any kind of physical damage, whether it be in the hotel, maybe you leave your laptop in the room and the house cleaner knocks it over and it breaks something. There's just so much potential for damage while we're traveling that someone like Mark really needs a good comprehensive solution to where whenever he's traveling, he'll be able to actually recover that data and be able to work, especially if he's not going to be home for a while or if we need to drop ship him something, right? So let's just go ahead and get in this. On a recent trip, Mark's laptop bag fell out of the overhead baggage compartment on the plane, and it made a nasty crashing sound. When he opens it up, he looks at it and he says, okay, it looks fine, but when he powers it on, he gets a hard disk failure error. Okay, so this is bad. Mark just arrived in his location and he has critical meetings all week. He's had presentations on his laptop that he'll need to actually use. He could get those presentations. He has them backed up to the cloud and he can use Veeam Agent for Windows to recover it to another machine and everything. But ideally, he wants his own laptop rather than trying to deal with that whole logistical nightmare. So when Mark gets to the hotel, he contacts his IT department. IT department RMAs the failed drive of his laptop because he's smart and has protection of his, 4-hour protection of his laptop and any hardware involved there. So within that 4 hours, the tech goes on site, gives Mark a new hard drive, replaces it for him. But now, even though the computer is technically working again, we just have that empty hard drive. So just like Kelly had done previously, Mark opens up his USB drive, boots it into the Veeam recovery media on the laptop, and connects to his Cloud Connect repository with his credentials. What he does is then he just goes, initiates that volume level restore, just like Kelly did, to the new hard drive, and Mark leaves it running overnight, restoring. When he wakes up, the restore is finished. Luckily, the laptop wasn't too big, and he was able to pull everything down from the WAN, and he's fully restored as of his last backup. So he's now able to go in and complete his work, attend his meetings without issue. So we just saved Mark a logistical nightmare of having to find all of this, recover that data from, probably have his IT team go through, recover that data, maybe email him the presentations. If they're larger, they'd have to get it to him another way. He'd have to find a USB drive. He'd have to find a laptop to use at all of his meetings to be able to present with. It's just such a logistical nightmare. Could he do it? Yeah, but we just made Mark's life a lot easier, and this just makes being a road warrior a lot easier as well. So this particular reason right here, I had something similar happen to me a few years ago, and this was shortly before Veeam came out with the Veeam Agent for Windows, and this was when I said, aha, perfect solution for me. And ever since then, I've backed up all of my laptops, especially when I'm traveling, up into a cloud provider like OffsiteDataSync, so that way I can do something similar if anything ever happens. Alrighty, great. So those are the two scenarios that I wanted to talk about today. And as you can imagine, there are certainly a lot more scenarios that we can think about where Veeam Agent for Windows could save us and our users, especially in a work from home environment. This is something that is going to start becoming a lot more prominent, especially as organizations realize that working from home, honestly, sometimes is even better for a lot of users. And frankly, we don't know where we're at with the current state of the world at the moment. Things seem to be going back to some level of normalcy, but it's hard to predict the future. We don't know what's going to happen. And some of you might say, you know what? Working from home does cause its challenges, but with some products like Veeam Agent for Windows, maybe it's not such a bad thing. And maybe as long as we can support our users, it might be actually beneficial for us. So let's talk a little bit about the company I work for, which is a Veeam Cloud Service Provider. And a lot of, or actually all of the things that we've discussed are things that we kind of are experts in. So just really quickly, we're 3 times Veeam's Partner of the Year, recognized for outstanding performance. Whoops, apologies about that. We're experienced. We have 20 years of delivering world-class data protection services with hundreds of thousands of physical and virtual machines under protection globally. we're secure, we're compliant, best-in-class global data center ecosystems, all those wonderful little acronyms that everyone needs in order to meet compliance. We likely meet them. Reach out to our sales team if you have any questions or you don't see the compliance that you're actually looking for here, and they can, certainly provide some more information and detail. We have credentialed professionals. So I am one of the 2 Veeam Vanguards that we currently employ. There are, I believe, only less than 60 Veeam Vanguards in the world. Veeam Vanguards are effectively Veeam experts that are tasked with basically spreading the good word of Veeam and coming up with good solutions to meet customer needs that might be a little bit out of the box. We have VMware V experts, also happen to be one of 2 that we have in the company as well. We have VMCE certified engineers. We have Veeam Architect certified engineers, and we are a Veeam accredited service provider. So all sorts of fun stuff like that as far as being credentialed. We really do try to hire the best of the best because that's really the best way that you provide good service, is having good employees, right? So we're forward thinking. So we've basically been trying to come up with good ways to provide new value for our customers. So not only is it being able to restore these Veeam Agent for Windows into our infrastructure as a service platform, we've also been nominated, actually, I'm sorry, not nominated, we've won 2 years in a row the Veeam Innovation Award for providing innovations into our product set using Veeam products to provide additional value to our customers. We're currently hoping for the VMUG event that's going on right now that will win Best in Show. We're one of 4 actual winners, and so far things are looking pretty good for that. We'll keep our fingers crossed, but the technology that we developed is really cool. I won't get into it too much now because we don't have the most time in the world, and frankly, I can talk about it for far longer than we have time allotted to us. But something that's very, very cool with regards to Veeam backups and performing actual DR testing, utilizing backups versus just replication. It's an automation platform that we built. Again, won't get into it, but something that's near and dear to my heart. So we have the stability and resources. So OffsiteDataSync, and I might not have mentioned it before, is part of J2 Global. So J2 Global is actually a global leader in cloud services with an amazing 24 consecutive years of revenue growth. And if you want to check that out, it's the NASDAQ symbol JCOM. So we were purchased by J2 almost about a year ago, and I've been with the company of OffsiteDataSync for about 5 years now, and it has been one of the most spectacular acquisitions. They've basically left us to our own devices. They said, OffsiteDataSync, you're tried and true for providing value to your customers. So we're not going to mess with that. But what we're going to do is give you the resources so that you guys can grow and support your customers in even better way than you were before. So it's just been absolutely wonderful being part of the J2 Global family. They've given us more resources than we can imagine, and it's really helped us provide greater service to our customers. We also have a global presence. So I think most people on this call are probably from the US, but if you are or have any offices, or maybe if you're not from the US, we have North America as OffsiteDataSync, but we have a sister company in EMEA and APAC markets called Keep It Safe. It's all under the same kind of umbrella. It just happens to be 2 different companies that serve different regions, but it's the same presence, same company, just different names depending on what region that you're in. All right, great. So that's the end of our call. I seem to have gone a little bit faster than in my practice run, so apologies about that. Hopefully I didn't go too fast for anyone, but that just leaves us more time for Q&A. Please go ahead, ask whatever questions that you would like in the question field here, and we'll open up that Q&A. But before we do that, I just want to talk a little bit about an exclusive offer that we have. So basically, we're offering disaster recovery as a service, 1 terabyte free, with the purchase of Microsoft 365 cloud-to-cloud backup. So what does that mean? Well, we offer a cloud-to-cloud backup product of Microsoft 365. I could talk about this at length, but effectively Microsoft puts the onus of backing up your data on the administrator, despite the fact that it's their cloud platform. And rather than backing up locally or something, we said, well, you know what, wouldn't it make sense if we could back up our cloud data to just another cloud platform, and all the restores and everything, it's all still has the cloud goodness that comes along with it. So that's why we spun up our cloud platform for Microsoft 365. With the purchase of that product, we're giving away disaster recovery as a service, 1 terabyte of data for free. Now, disaster recovery as a service is just a really nice way of saying Veeam replication. So being able to replicate into our data center. It's a great way to kind of dip your toes into a cloud kind of environment, because you replicate your data actually in to our infrastructure as a service platform. Same one I talked about that we can restore Kelly's data into. So let's say something happens to your data center or maybe your office or what have you. Basically, it's just a one-click restore into the cloud. You get a fully functional virtual firewall in front of that to facilitate any client access or anything like that. A lot more I could do to talk about this, but for the interest of time, I'll kind of back away from here, but definitely visit offsitedatasync.com/Q2/promo to learn a little bit more, and certainly reach out to our sales team if you have any questions about that, and they can connect you with an engineer like myself who can maybe kind of learn a little bit about what your use case is and how we're going to, meet your needs, meet your RPOs, meet your RTOs as far as the DRaaS, and also how we're going to meet your needs for Microsoft 365. So great, thank you so much. I really appreciate everyone attending this webinar. You can, if you want a partner referral, partners@offsitedatasync.com. If you have sales inquiries, sales@offsitedatasync.com, or visit our website, www.offsitedatasync.com, to learn a little bit more about everything that we might do. We offer a ton of more solutions outside of just this product, but we really wanted to gear this towards the new paradigm that's happening nowadays, and that's just everyone working from home. Because we at OffsiteDataSync/J2 have not necessarily struggled with it, but have found that it brings about a new area of challenges to be able to provide, confidence to our users and be able to service them just like we normally would working remotely. So with that in mind, I'm going to go ahead and open up the questions here. Looks like we have a few questions from some folks. Let me just go ahead and pop this up. Okay, so we have a question from Reza. With summer at the corner with clear sky, what will happen to my data in the cloud? I'm not quite sure of the question you're asking here, Reza, but I think that probably what you're asking is, let's say if there's an issue with some of the data in the cloud, or maybe we start working back in the office again and we want to take that data in the cloud and restore it. We went through all those different recovery options and how to actually restore that back, whether it be to different hardware, or we could even just take some of that data that might be on a user's home machine that was backed up with Veeam Agent and just restore it back directly to another machine. We don't have to do the volume level backups with the Veeam Agent for Windows or Linux. It can be file-based as well. So any kind of data that you might have in a backup file, we simply just need to connect to, pull it down directly from the cloud, and life is good. You could also do that volume level restore if you want as well. Maybe the user said, okay, well, I want all my desktop icons and everything in the exact same place, and we can do that hardware independent restore down actually back into that machine using the Veeam Agent for Windows. It's entirely up to us. And I'm getting another from here, from Juan. Juan is asking, is there any demo or test options? So yeah, actually, if you want to reach out to our sales folks, sales@offsitedatasync.com, or simply head over to www.offsitedatasync.com. We offer a number of trial options, and if for things that we don't offer a trial for, we do live demos. We have all of this available for you. Just reach out to our sales team and inquire with them and say, hey, I saw Brad's presentation, and this certain thing kind of interested me, this might be a good use case, and they'll either send you the video presentation directly, or what they'll probably do is they'll say, hey, you know what, let's connect you with one of our technical experts. They'll be able to kind of review everything, find your use case, rather than just giving you a bunch of information. That's really one of the best services that we provide at OffsiteDataSync is we've been doing this for a long time, and our strategy as a company is to do backups and replication and disaster recovery. We don't really play much in the world of some of our competitors as far as doing large scale IaaS customer offerings and things like that. We mostly tried to find our niche in the backup and disaster recovery world and pinpoint our experts and our expertise in that. So if you come to us and you say, Brad, I don't know what I'm doing. I know that I need to get my data up and running. I don't know how I'm going to do that. What's an RPO? What's an RTO? What makes sense for me? Help us define what this is going to be. Well, we're going to talk to you and we're going to find your use case, and we can use our expertise to try and make recommendations to try and meet those needs for you, and also be able to provide some justification for why you need disaster recovery, why you need backup. It's funny, I hear it all the time. People say, why do I need backup? Why do I need backup to be in two places? Why can't I just back up locally? What's wrong with that? Well, I'm sure some administrators who are on the phone right now might be laughing a little bit, because we've all been there before. We've all heard stories of backups living in the same data center. Maybe the building burns down or some other disaster happens, floods, what have you, and your backups are really no good if they're in the same fault environment that your regular data's in. So it is important to have these discussions and make sure that our folks are actually aware of some of these issues or some of these potential risks that we're taking by storing that data somewhere locally along with our regular environment. So that being said, those are all the questions that I see. Thank you so much to everyone for taking the time out of your busy schedules to attend this presentation. I hope it kind of gave you some things to think about as far as how do we continue to protect our users in the work from home world that we're living in right now and may potentially be living in for a long time. Things change in the world, and it's up to us as administrators to be agile and ensure that that we make sure that we have the tools and capabilities to protect our users. So with that in mind, I'm going to pass this back over to Nick from the VMUG team. Thank you so much for this opportunity, Nick. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Brad, for taking the time to speak with us today. As a reminder, today's raffle winner will be notified by OffsiteDataSync after today's webcast. You will receive a follow-up email with the on-demand link from today's webcast. To find out more about the VMUG webcast program, please visit vmug.com and check out the education page. Please make sure to complete the short online evaluation that will pop up as you exit the webcast and let us know how today's session went. And from all of us here at VMUG, thank you and have a great rest of your day.